I never thought I would be telling this story like this, carrying this much pain in my heart. But I have to, because she was my best friend, my sister in every way that mattered. Because the world should know what happened to her, how love broke her, and how, in the end, she just couldn't bear the weight of her pain anymore. A life stolen by pain. Her name was Rosemary. We were nurses working side by side in the same hospital, sharing dreams, frustrations, and secrets. She was the kind of person who lit up a room with her presence, who made even the hardest days at work feel bearable. She had a laugh that could turn any bad day around. And she loved her daughter, Zuri, more than life itself. Everything she did was for that little girl. That day started like any other. I was on shift when I got a call from her sister, Lola. There was something in her voice, an urgency that sent chills down my spine. "Come to the house after your shift," she said. When I asked why, she hesitated. "It's about Rosemary," was all she said before hanging up. I barely made it through my shift, my mind running wild with worry. The second I was free, I rushed to Rosemary's house, heart pounding in my chest. The moment I walked through the door and saw the look on Lola's face, I knew something was terribly wrong. It started with something so simple, so ordinary. She had forgotten her purse at home. A small mistake, a moment of forgetfulness. She went back to get it, never expecting to walk in on the scene that shattered her world. Her husband, her loving, devoted husband, the father of her 7-year-old daughter, was in bed with another man, a man who had been living with them for 3 months. He had told her he was just a friend in need, someone who had lost his job and had nowhere to go, and she, with her kind and trusting heart, had welcomed him into their home. She told me later, in broken whispers, how her whole body had gone numb, how her husband had simply looked at her, unbothered, and said, "Sorry you found out this way, but this is America. The law protects me." And just like that, he packed her things, threw them outside, and told her to leave. She was devastated. She called me that night, sobbing so hard I could barely understand her words. "How could he do this? How could he throw me away like that?" she kept saying. I didn't have answers. I just told her I would be there for her, no matter what. But it wasn't enough. The pain was too much for her to bear. She came from a country where being with another man like that was a crime, something unthinkable. Her entire life, her marriage, had been a lie. And now she had nothing, not even a home to return to. Her husband moved out soon after, leaving Rosemary with nothing but heartbreak and the pieces of a life she thought was real. The days that followed were dark. She was shattered. The humiliation, the betrayal, the fear of what people back home would say, it all weighed so heavily on her. She tried to be strong for Zuri, but inside, she was drowning. And we, her friends, saw it. We took turns watching her, making sure she wasn't alone. She stopped eating. She barely spoke. Her once bright, compassionate eyes were empty. "I don't know how to live anymore," she whispered to me one night as we sat in silence. "What do I tell my daughter?" We reminded her that her daughter needed her, that she still had a life to live. But the pain never left her eyes. And for a while, we thought she was getting better. She even started making plans, talking about moving forward, about rebuilding. But she was just pretending. Then that day came, a day I will never forget for as long as I live. Rosemary had seemed better that morning. She even smiled a little, which gave me hope. I had to leave for work in the afternoon, and her sister, Lola, took over watching her. Before I left, I held her hand and told her, "We'll get through this together." She nodded, but there was something in her eyes, a quiet sadness that I should have paid more attention to. At around 4 p.m., she told Lola she needed to use the restroom. Minutes later, there was a loud thud. Lola rushed in and found her on the floor, a used syringe beside her. A lethal injection, something she had carefully prepared and hidden days before. Her sister called the 911. She was still breathing when the ambulance arrived, but barely. They rushed her to the hospital, our hospital, the place where she had saved countless lives. But we couldn't save hers. The moment the ambulance pulled into the hospital premises, her heart stopped. Just like that, she was gone. I remember standing there in disbelief, refusing to accept it. I kept thinking about Zuri, about how she would wake up the next morning and ask for her mother. How do you tell a 7-year-old that her mother is never coming back? Her funeral was a blur. Her family took custody of her daughter. And her husband, the man who destroyed her. 2 months later, I saw him, Rosemary's husband. He was sitting in a restaurant, laughing, drinking with friends like nothing had happened, like he hadn't destroyed a woman's life, like he hadn't left his own daughter motherless. I wanted to scream, to confront him, to make him feel even a fraction of the pain Rosemary had endured. But I didn't. I just walked away because nothing I said or did would bring her back. Her family took custody of Zuri. They promised to love her, to protect her, to make sure she never forgot the mother who had given everything for her. But it will never be the same. If I could speak to Rosemary one last time, I would tell her that she was loved, that we would have stood by her no matter what, that Zuri will grow up knowing her mother was a strong, beautiful soul who deserved so much better than what life gave her. I tell this story because she deserves to be remembered, because no one should ever feel so broken, so abandoned, that death feels like the only escape. If only she had held on a little longer. If only she had seen what we saw in her. If only. But now all we have left is her memory and the ache of knowing she left this world believing she had no other choice. To anyone carrying unbearable pain, please, reach out, hold on. You are not alone. There is always light, even in the darkest night.
Like, share, and subscribe. Turn on the notification bell so you be the first to get notified of new story updates.